When it comes to bhakti, which is a relationship with God,
Another, yes.
right? How does one build that? Like, how is there, how do I get that introduction?
Well, it starts with you. First of all, you have to consider, and this is where free will and that we're given, right, such as reason. We have to use reason to think, am I the ultimate truth or is something beyond me? That's the first step. So if you think you're the ultimate truth, now that gets presented in different theological ways. Advaita Vedanta is going to have its version of this idea that really tattvamasi, you are that, aham brahmasmi, you are that ultimate truth. So that would be an Advaita take.
Right.
Kashmir Shaivism, you are Shivoham, you're ultimately that Shiva, and you, right? So though there are traditions which don't consider that there is an ultimate being eternally and fundamentally beyond you. Shankara may accept Ishvara, but only temporarily in conventional reality. Vyavaharika, you remember you did the Vedanta Sutra course, right? So you remember all of that. So if that doesn't work for you, and you think, no, I can't be the ultimate truth because I'm in Maya, I'm in ignorance. Kashmir Shaivism will say, well, that's all Leela, it's all Shiva's Leela. If that doesn't work for you,
Yeah.
if the idea of two-tiered reality a la Advaita doesn't work for you,
Yeah.
and fundamentally you feel, no, if I was the absolute truth, I wouldn't be suffering. I wouldn't be, there must be intelligence, right? Which is a theistic way of thinking, right? But I may be a part of that, I may be a spark of that, but I can't be the entirety of that. If that's obvious to you, if there's some samskaras in your mind from past lives or who knows where, it's obvious the way your samskaras consider these things. It's obvious that I can't be the ultimate truth. You're then a theist, but a deep level theist, not someone that's using Ishvara temporarily as a path and then everything dissolves into Brahman. Not like that kind of a theism. Not a theism where there's Shivas out there and eventually you realize, wait a minute, I'm Shiva, Shivoham. Not that kind of theism. The theism where you understand that there's some eternal distinct being. Then you seek that being. If you believe that deep enough, either and if you have this conviction that the point of life is to seek that being, if you have that deep level understanding, not that you just go into that being whenever you need something, go to church and pray, or Monday to pray. If you have a deep sense, again, maybe past life samskaras, deep sense that being is to be sought, well, then you seek that being. And the way I think of it, in my own life, my experience was, you think you're seeking it. But when you really surrender to that, at first you don't know what it is. You just know there's something higher, and it's an intelligent entity, intelligence, right? That Vedanta establishes right at the beginning. Then you surrender to it, and this is certainly what the Shastras will say, and it was completely and utterly my experience, that I completely, when I was up in North India, before I got to Vrindavan, 10 days before, I didn't tell you this, not part of the story, but I was studying Buddhism, and Buddhism wasn't working for me. I knew this is not my spiritual path, but, I didn't have any other, I wasn't in a hurry, I didn't have any other plans. So I was up in Dharamsala studying with the monks, but at one point I deeply prayed, a completely one of the deepest prayers I've ever, sincere, genuine, humility, desperation, helplessness, all of that mixed into that moment of complete surrender. Please help, please help. I can't figure this out with my own intellect. That was obvious, that was clear to me. That there was someone, number one, and number two, I couldn't figure it out with my own resources. When you're that place, you're ready to surrender. When you surrender, then Ishvara makes all you think you're seeking, but Ishvara. Within 10 days, I was in Vrindavan. Never heard of Vrindavan. Never meant to get off the train. I was on the train going to Agra. And I got off because that's another story. I just got off randomly because the people in the train kept telling me, because we were talking and they never seen a Westerner at the back. We're talking about 70s,
right?
In person. So then Ishvara comes to you, is the point that I'm making. So there has to be that deep, desperate surrender. It's a nice word. Samarpana. Patanjali calls it pranidhana. So then Ishwar comes, and in my case, that was Krishna. Someone else, it might be some other form of Ishwar. Krishna says, I come in whatever form my bhaktas wish. In my case, I wasn't wishing for a form. I was like, okay, I like Shiva, wasn't. I was just wishing for guidance and for divine connection. But I think it was sincere. I like to think it was so sincere that within 10 days I was in Vrindavan by accident, completely and utterly by accident. And then that was it. So what was your question? How do you know? So how do you know?
How do you start that relationship, right?
Surrender.
Surrender.
So you have to acknowledge your own suffering. Because if you don't know you're suffering, then why would you change what you're doing? Whatever you're doing, if you think that's fine and hunky-dory, then why would you want to do anything else? That doesn't make any sense. So you have to, number one, acknowledge suffering, which all the schools accept is the starting point, right? First noble truth of Buddhism. And number two, in Bhakti, this may not be the case in Jnana and other traditions, which may rely more on your ego, your intellect. You use your intellect in Bhakti, but in Bhakti it's about complete surrender. Mm. And so therefore it has to be, one, you're suffering. Two, you recognize you can't resolve it with your own resources. This is an important step in Bhakti. You can't figure it out on your own resources. Intellectual, you can study, read, do all of this, but your own resources are inadequate. So therefore humility, which is really honesty, and then surrender to something higher. That's how you create the relationship. And that's when Bhagavan becomes attracted. Mm. The sincerity, the surrender, the helplessness, like any parent figure would to a child. If you're a child and you're crying for help, what adult wouldn't, try to resolve that? So that's I think how the relationship begins, and then as you deepen that surrender, Bhagavan manifests more and more, right? You're not going to have a vision of Krishna playing a flute necessarily right away, but there are many ways that you feel the presence of Bhagavan. Right. In terms of guidance in your life, in terms of, when the mind is fully surrendered, let's say, to japa, you feel ecstasy, you feel that bliss of that divine connection. No one can tell you otherwise. Okay, no one can, whatever people say, whatever reductionistic psychological interpretations and they might want to apply to that, that you have a connection with the divine. And if you're a Krishna Bhakta, that means Krishna. But obviously acknowledging that other sadhakas, other bhaktas may have, and even within the Krishna tradition, there are those that are attracted to Radha Krishna. My preference is Gopala Krishna. So even within the Krishna tradition, there are different Krishnas, not really different Krishnas, but there's different bhavs, there's different relationships that one can have. Yeah.